On today's episode of the Texas Toast Podcast, it is a Texas original. We've got Pat Green joining us. We're going to talk about his new music that's out, new single, also him receiving the humanitarian award recently at the T3R Awards. And then we just dig back into Texas music history. It's just a great, fun interview. Hopefully, you'll learn something new about the beginning times of the Texas country music industry right here on the Texas Toast Podcast.
Let's go.
Cheers, everyone. It's time for the Texas Toast Podcast. And I just want to say, at Texas Toast, it means cheers to the best from Texas. And I have him here. Pat Green. Hi. It is so good to see you. And it is amazing to have you on the podcast. And I just get to pick your brain and talk to you about all kinds of stuff.
Thanks for having me on, Helen. I appreciate that. I don't know about the best, but I'll take one of the oldest. I'm not the oldest, but I'm getting up there.
Well, you've done so much for our Texas music, and it's always been a passion of mine. Even when I was in radio, those late '90s, when things started blowing up, and we started programming it and getting it on the radio, and then our charts came along. We'll get into that a little bit later. Let's talk about something very exciting for you right now. You dropped a single to streaming that is absolutely fabulous. Elvis in Memphis co-wrote it with an amazing songwriter, Brett James, who has written so many songs. You pulled Walt Wilkins in on it. So let's talk a little bit about the background on that song and getting it out to streaming.
It's kind of an all-star list there, really. Yeah, Brett James and I have written a lot of songs. We wrote "Feels Just Like It Should" together, amongst others that I've recorded over the years. Yeah, and then Walt Wilkins, man, I wrote my very first song that I thought was any good with him. He was my mentor, is my mentor, whatever, for my entire musical life. So it's one of those things that I'm lucky enough in life to have gotten to be around tremendous talent, and that's just a lucky thing for me. So I appreciate all those moments.
Yes. And so this was a song that actually y'all had written a while back.
That's right. We wrote it right about the same time we were doing the Home album. I don't know how many years ago that was, several years ago. But when we were making that record, Brett and I sat down and we wrote a series of songs that were kind of similar, right, in structure, and this one and the end of the title track, Home. We wrote, I think, within a couple days of each other, and there's another version of this song that's huge and bombastic, the same way that song Home is. Finally found my way back home, um, and so we chose Home because it would just seem to hit a better chord for us at the time, and so that one, Elvis in Memphis, just ended up on the shelf, and that's kind of the way. That's the way things always go. But then I brought it to the band, and I was like, our current band, and I was like, okay, guys, let's see what you can do with this. Make a different arrangement of the music, and I didn't really give much more direction than that. And the guys really, they really came together and created something that's really cool on a kind of a Chris Isaac vibe, and it just has this real, I don't know, syrupy kind of, it flows great, and then it comes to a really cool chorus. It's got great lines in the verses. It's just I think it's a great song, but it didn't make the grade the last time, but it certainly did this time.
Yes, timing is everything. It was perfect timing for that
Absolutely.
song. Yes. And I think some of the lyrics that stood out to me is I've got more planned than a one night stand. This is gonna take the rest of your life. When I heard that,
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, that
Oh
was
man,
Pat
this
Green.
guy,
That's
our
awesome.
character is, yeah, our character's really selling it, is what I'm saying. He's really, he's laying on
Yes.
the extra sauce to make sure that he wants to sound like the good guy, and I mean, honestly, there's so many times in my personal life, like in college, when I'm, just a little bit cheesy, and when I was trying to get the girl to go out with me or whatever, and yeah, that's what that is. And I don't know, I'm not going to say this is like a mirror image of my college days and how I met my wife, but pretty much every song I've ever written, there's an element of it where um it's how I got with my wife. And so but I always knew that my music career and the thing that I was focused on with my dreams if I got it, it was going to be a hell of a ride. It was going to be a great, fun life, and you know, it panned out. Which so I got lucky. I'm one of those lucky few that gets to live my dream, as you do too. So yeah, yeah, this is quite a bit autobiography, whatever. How do you say that word? It's a really long word for this early morning.
Autobiographical,
Yeah.
autobiographical. Yes, we're doing good. Well, speaking of, I guess autobiographical, we can transition into something currently also for you. I was in Arlington at Texas Live at T3R Awards, and you
Right.
received the Humanitarian Award. That was such a great moment, and I know you have your foundation, and it means so much to you and your wife Corey. Y'all both do so much for charities.
It's really hard to get a humanitarian award. I'll say that's the most awkward feeling because you're like you kind of do this stuff so you don't have to talk about what you do for
Yourself,
charity. You know, you just kind of let
yes,
the works kind of speak for itself,
exactly.
and so that was it's awkward to accept the award. But I'm glad that people. I mean, more the upside for me is that more people know that we do have a place that if you want to
Hmm.
donate to um, a great many charities that me and my wife and the board of my foundation, we know we pick a lot of places to park that money that go to. We pick underdogs. Is what we do. We go for underdog charities that nobody's necessarily heard of, because you think about the American Cancer Society, the hearts, you know, hearts and you know, cancer and all these other humongous charities that deserve every dime that's given to them. Um, but the ones that you'd never hear about, like cystic fibrosis, um, you know, it's not really on people know that word, but they don't really know what it means, and they don't really know that there's only about 25 or 30,000 people in the U.S. that suffer from it. So that's why we can't get federal funding for that particular thing, that particular disease. So those are the things that we're looking for when we set out. As far as, you know, who we give to, is we're looking for, you know, things that don't have, you know, signs up on billboards that need this. They need as much money as they can get their hands on.
Mhm. So speaking of the T3R awards while you were there, what did you think? I mean, it's like it's amazing how our industry has grown so much. And it seems like
Yeah.
I should start having a class of like 2024, 2023 with these younger
Right.
artists coming up. I mean, the show was spectacular, but think back to when those awards first started.
Yeah, I've been to the Marconis, you know, and I think that radio awards are unsung heroes, right? The people behind the microphone that people don't get to look at on the day. They hear them every day.
Mhm.
They know who these people are, but they wouldn't know. They couldn't pick them out of a lineup. So to celebrate our people that really look after us is a righteous thing to do. And yeah, you got to think, man. You know, we are just a space in time, right? We are just a moment right here, and so all that was before and all that's to come, all we have is right now. So we better celebrate now, because once we're gone, we're probably not going to get any awards after we're dead.
True. So yeah, that was a great night. Well, speaking of the music and kind of going back in history, I still I think everybody every now and then it was like during prepping for the interview. I mean, Pat Green, you're in my music all the time, but there's something about going back and listening to Dance Hall Dreamer again. And it's like, I Like Texas was one of my all-time favorite songs. I couldn't wait when we finally programmed Texas music to play Take Me Out to a Dance Hall. I mean, I go back that far. And it's like you just come along with these songs. So let's kind of go back to the beginning in Lubbock when you were at Tech. I want to pick your brain about that.
started I started falling in love with it, with music at Tech. I didn't start playing guitar until I was a freshman in college, and I learned really quick. I played piano when I was a kid, so I have some musical brain, but so I understood what it sounded like, what good music sounded like, and I knew how to sing, because my dad was in plays, you know, when I was a kid, so I'd sing along with what he was doing, and I recognized that I could sing in tune and at relatively high tone, you know, like in a you know, a pretty good register. So anyway, it started at David Henry's apartment. He's a friend of mine, and Corey Morrow and I would go over on Wednesday nights. Me after all Greek Bible study, where I was the music leader, singing, "Shine Jesus, shine" and whatnot. And then we'd go buy a case of beer and go over to
Love
Dave's
it.
house and play Hank Williams and Jerry Jeff Walker and Jack Ingram songs and Robert Earl Keen and Jerry. It just we spent all night, and we rarely made it to school on Thursday because we were up, till the light of dawn on Thursday morning,
Mhm.
and that's really where it started. But if you think about those first records, like Dancehall Dreamer, I Like Texas is still played on every home win for the Texas Rangers.
I know.
That gives me heart swell, and my wife says gives me the big head. But in Southbound 35, we play that song
Yeah.
every night. We play it every night. It's so, we were playing a show. Take Me Out to a Dance Hall, for that matter. We were playing a show the other night, and like it was a big private party, a couple thousand people at this private event, and we started singing, and I looked out, and all these people who look my age, all the way down to the youngest people, were singing these songs that are 25, 30 years old. And so, I know we did something right. I know we landed on something that was pretty decent. I'm not saying that I'll ever be the Stones or Sting or George Strait or Kenny Chesney or any of these big names, but for what it's worth, the songs that we wrote during those years and the music that we made hit a chord, and it's lasted a long time.
Has lasted a long time. And um, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I was thinking about this just like a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about, okay, so I had the whole history of how everything came about with radio programming and Texas music and the charts, and when Shane Media was around. And so you got a CD. Now what? They
Mm.
would have those workshops going back to that. I never really have dug into. I know that Blue Light in Lubbock, like what you were talking about with you and Corey and what you were doing there. What were some other venues that you feel like when you guys were first starting out that it was like they welcomed you? They were jumping on this bandwagon. They were jumping into this Texas music thing. Have you ever wondered how artists like Treaty Oak Revival, Red Clay Strays, and Aaron Watson maintain the high quality and high demand for their merchandise? CH Lone Star Promo is the answer. Created in Texas to serve Texas artists, and they're currently offering 15% off on all merch orders from musicians. Visit chlonestarpromo.com to get started and tell them Texas Toast sent you.
I was reading the other day that it takes at least $1 million to break an artist. That's a ton of change, and it can feel overwhelming. But with social media leveling the playing field, you just need an effective strategy to release your music. Check out Release Rocket to ensure your single does not die after release day. You've already put time, effort, and tons of money into writing and recording your album. Let the guys at Release Rocket keep your new release alive.
Well, we didn't have Blue Light when I was in college. It wasn't around yet. We had Stubbs, which was
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
little barbecue joint. Held about 400 people whenever they had a concert, and we got in there, and it really, honestly, it was kind of, they didn't really. There was not much of a choice because that was the only venue big enough for us to go play. And then the Depot Warehouse opened, and that held about 800 people. But those were the first two places in Lubbock where we had bigger shows. Now our first shows were down on at Bash Rip Rocks down on Broadway. But after that, and things started getting moving, the Stubbs in Austin was really, really good to us. The Melody Ranch in Waco, Two Teardrops Tavern in Dallas. I mean, Three Teardrops Tavern, excuse me. Yeah, those early days were a smattering, and a lot of times we just made it up. I mean, and it was so much fun. I mean, writing songs was fun, recording songs was fun, and like, okay, we don't have a big enough venue now in Waco. So I had a buddy that lived, I grew up in Waco most of my life. And so I had a buddy who had a fence company, and we got a permit, and we fenced off a portion of the street in downtown of Washington Avenue, and we just we just put up a fence, and we had a hole in the fence where we let the people in. We took $10 a head, and walked out of there with a little chunk of change. That's how it was, so organic and so. And we had, I mean, we actually used mailers. There was no internet. at
Right,
all.
right.
So we used mailers like postcards, right? And so I remember we had a printer. We did have computers, thankfully, so we could print off the labels. I remember spending hours and hours putting these labels on these. On one side was the address and the stamp. Had to lick a stamp, and and then on the back was the month, all the shows we had that month, right? And it was, yeah, I mean, just sitting in Greg's office, Greg Henry, who still is a great influence in Texas music as well, does books a ton of shows and is a great advocate. We were great friends in college and so forth. So anyway, yeah, just the great times of us sitting in his office, and he had one of his entire walls made into a dry erase, and so all of my calendars were up on that wall, and we would just sit there and okay, we'd figure out where, Robert Earl and Jerry Jeff and Jack Ingram and Corey Moore were playing. And then then that was how, okay, these are the places that we want to play, because if these guys can do it, we can do it. And then we'd make sure that we had some distance from them, right? Because we didn't want to play. If Robert Earl was playing on Friday night, we didn't want to play on Saturday night because nobody show up.
Right.
So it was that simple. And don't play nights of a home football game in College Station if Texas A&M's
True.
playing. We had to
Yes.
learn those lessons the hard way, really. So it was a blast. That's really kind of how it all started. There was a place in Houston called the Firehouse that was great to us.
Always good. That was on the tip of my
Yeah,
tongue.
yeah,
Firehouse that's where I got to go and see, and like they were advertisers and followed them. Yes, that was
yeah.
famous.
And it burned down, which is so
Yeah,
sad.
it's so sad. So
But
sad.
I had great memories there. I remember like a few times we would go play the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. We did that 10 years in a row, and so we had a great run there. But after that show, me and the guys would get together and all go down to the firehouse and just hang out. And
Yes.
it was like, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. I mean, we'd walk in and people like get out of the way, and we go stand up at the bar, and then I'd end up sooner or later I'd end up behind the bar serving drinks, and those were some just incredibly great times. Yeah.
Yes. I love hearing those stories and going back a bit. And so I had another one I wanted to talk about your I have so many notes here. Hang on, Pat, a second. Oh, the Dance Hall Dreamin' tribute that was done for you. How is that for you?
It was uncomfortable again. Uh, I, I'm just not the guy. It's like talking about my foundation, but it's the same thing. Like, I, am I old enough to have a tribute record? I mean, I look old enough for sure. If you see this big cotton ball on my chin, but um, yeah, my management got that going, and I started kind of hearing little whispers here and there, and so I didn't find out till it was almost finished. Um, but I think the guys did a great job. Um, yeah, I was just like, and I called my manager. I said, George, look, George Corey. I said, hey man, you know what you've gotten me into by getting this going. I said, now I'm going to have to do a tribute for every one of these other mother scratchers. You just signed me up for a ton of work, you know. So
I
anyway,
like how you put the twist on that. But I think as fans of your music, I enjoyed it. Anytime we can get some more Pat Green music, well, that was a big deal. And then I guess, 3 days and Wave on Wave did so much for you. And that was
oh
like
yeah,
my daughter. Of course, she's grown now. She's and has her own family, but it's like when those songs came out, like she would be going to volleyball and softball games, and of course, she would get all the CDs from the radio station, all the live from Billy Bob's, all that. All she had was Texas music in that little packet when they still had those little flat CD players, and it would just be Jam and Pat Green all the way to the volleyball games, softball games. It was just an amazing time. But those songs, those two are something else.
man. Yeah, those songs definitely broke the door down. I would say Carry On really got the ball
Mhm.
started, right? It started that was the little tiny snowball, you know, that started at the top of hill. When Carry On started getting in some pretty good rotation in Houston and San Antonio and Dallas, it was apparent to me that man, if we could only capitalize on that. And so that's exactly when we signed with Universal Records. That was in 2000. And then 2002, 3 Days came out, and Carry On, they rebooted it and used that as a single. And then 3 Days came on, and it got up for a couple of Grammys, and so that got a lot of notoriety. And that's when the ball started really moving. And then we made Wave on Wave, and it was kind of game over after that. It was, once again, that was a really, those days were so heady. I mean, it's just like you're just welling up. I don't know, it's like you're riding your own wave, right? And I don't mean to be that, it sounds so cliche when I say that about those songs, but you're the momentum is so big that, yeah, it's fantastic. And I had my shot. I had that time, and guys like Parker and Cody and Co Wetzel, and those guys are going through the exact same thing that I got to go through. And except mine was obviously hard to say this, 22 years ago. So I don't know. I look at it and go, good luck to those guys, because I know how hard it is, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm so proud for
Yes.
their success, and I just, the more that, because Texas music is this, right? It's just up and down and up and down and up and down, and so, but every single generation puts a hero out there, everyone. And after me it was Randy, and after Randy it's got to be, you got to look at Parker, and you got to look at those guys who I just mentioned. And
Yes. Mhm.
and after those guys there's going to be another guy. And that was a hard realization for me. I have to tell you what, because when you're the guy and you're selling out the Astrodome and the Houston Rodeo, and you're selling,
Yes.
you're doing all these crazy things that are so much fun, and touring around the world and seeing everything you've ever wanted to see, and then you realize, oh, my time's over. It's time for the next guy, And now, don't get me wrong, I love Helen. I love my job, and it's still there. I still do, between 80 and 100 shows a year, which is
Mhm.
all I want to do. Now I'm
Mhm.
in a very comfortable place where I can look from the bleachers and go, I remember those days. I wish you would talk to me. I tell you what not to do. But
Right, right. Well, I was kind of going to go in that little bit of that direction because, especially the ear that's behind this and producing. He's a singer-songwriter, and he and Keller Cox did this song swap that was just amazing this past Sunday. And we have so many of the new artists that are just their first radio releases are out, some of their first shows, some of their first, big debuts are coming out, and it's the talent and their where their hearts are, and wanting to keep it, and they're so respectful of our industry. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. These guys and gals are so respectful of the people like you that came before them. And I had one of our younger artists on, and he again, just like you and the guys, so many of them didn't pick up the guitar till college. It's like, and I
yeah,
said, is there something with our Texas music to where it happens in college? Like, drink the water there. It's like, get a guitar, start singing,
yeah. You
and
look at Texas Tech,
it's
man. There's something
amazing.
in the water.
Yes.
Me and Josh Abbott and William Clark Green, Wade
Yes.
Bowen, Corey Morrow. I mean, there's the names that everybody knows, and they all came from Tech. I don't know. Maybe it's just that there's such an endless horizon, right? That you can, if you look for long enough, you'll find that you'll find something out there, But yeah, there's something about Texas. It's the culture.
Mhm.
Um, it's the fact that we have 30 million people living in this state. It's a big melting pot. It's a country on its own. I always say things like, if you think about grunge, from back in the 90s, I mean, that came from Seattle. That came from A Spot, boom. And you think about, the Mississippi Delta Blues, and you think about Zydeco from New Orleans, and you think, obviously Nashville country. I'm just saying, there are places that are more conducive to a certain thing or a certain sound. And I think that Texas certainly because of not only how big the population is and how diverse the population is. And everybody here has these two wonderful things on the sides of their head,
Yes.
and they can listen to whatever, sets the hook in their mouth and turns their head. So I think that's how come Texas music has such a big influence in this massive place that's the size of France. I mean, you know, it's like, yeah, of course we have our own music.
Yes. All you got to do is turn a corner and find a live venue and go check it out and listen to some
Yeah,
Texas artists. And that's,
yeah.
yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, man. That's what I think about it.
I,
Sometimes the bad and the ugly turn out to be the best of all time. So don't discount anybody. Give everybody the respect.
that's exactly right. So, so true. Love those words right there. So, and you mentioned that you're out. I looked at your schedule. You've got some good stuff coming up.
Oh man, it's fun. We've had a wonderful year already. So we got to play some really big fun shows. What the one about down in Georgetown? I can't. Gosh dang it! I wish I could remember the name of that festival. But man,
Two
there was
step in.
the
I
Two
was
Step
there.
Festival. Yeah,
Yes.
Two Step In. Yeah, and there had to be 20,000 people standing in front of us, and it was just electric. It was fantastic. So it's still happening. It's great when I can turn the microphone around and the people in the crowd
Hmm.
sing along. And so yeah.
It's always so much fun to go to a Pat Green show. I love your shows. And one thing I
Yeah,
want
I
to
like it.
say
They're
is I
loose, they're
remember
free. Sometimes they're sloppy, and that's just part of
my
my gig, man.
yeah, my big thing was I turned around. You were so sweet, and you had played my home county. This was Brazoria County Fair many years ago, and you had played my home county fair, Austin County Fair, the night before. And of course, all my friends were like sending me videos. I'm like, I know, I get to see him tomorrow. But I remember looking at you, and I just went, I get to stand on your rug. You did
Yes,
that. That's exactly what you did. You were like, it's okay.
it's
It's
fantastic.
just so cool.
My rug is your rug. Trust me.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so I'm gonna I picked five of your and mine favorites. And I'm gonna throw a name out at you. It's one of your friends, Texas artists. And first word that comes to mind, just tell
Yeah,
me. Okay. So let's start with Corey Morrow,
lifelong.
Jack Ingram,
My favorite mess.
Randy Rogers,
One of the most soulful, one word, voice.
Kevin Fowler,
Party.
and Wade Bowen.
There are no words.
I know, right?
There's
Right.
no words for dude. Wade's just he's every word.
Yes, yes. He's another one. I'm kind of getting short on time, but he's another
You're
one that
fine. Take your time. I don't care.
when he first started, and we were playing him on the radio, and it was again Brazoria County Fair, and he was like that 5 o'clock slot, like the early,
Yeah.
and man, I'd already fell in love with his voice, but when he stood at that mic and that voice came out live like that, oh
Yeah,
my
it doesn't look
gosh,
like it doesn't look like it would come out of him, does
I know
it?
it's those moments that you remember, and I still to this day remember that, and I'll be visiting with him in a couple of days or so. But anyway, so oh my gosh, Pat Green, this has been so much fun. Thank you for
Right
all
on.
that you've done in your music and your hard work and just being who you are, and we appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks for having me on your program. I really appreciate it. That sounds like my
Whatever.
dad, though. This is a wonderful program, son. You need to pay attention.